Hello and welcome to the Worldview session, sponsored by Northern Ireland Screen, with Wayne Garvie, President, honestly you really don't have to clap, President of International Production at Sony Pictures, otherwise known as a chat with Wayne and Jane.
We've had many adventures over the years with that, haven't we?
We have had many adventures as Wayne and Jane. As you can tell, we may be poised, but we are not posh, Wayne and Jane. So, some of you may be aware that Wayne's Worldview is generally seen as a member, I just discovered, of the British Airways Premium Premier Club class or something. And his worldview, once he's got out of the car that drives him directly to the airplane, is generally from 40,000 feet in the air, crisscrossing the globe. Apparently, it says in my notes that your PR wrote, with a glass of champagne in his hand.
I never drink on planes, you get terrible.
I'm with you on that. But for the next hour, his feet are very firmly on terra firma. And he's here to offer his insight into an industry he has been at the heart of for nearly 40 years. Can you believe that? Yeah, they can. Yeah, they can.
40 in her case. I think you're fine. In my case, it's only about 37.
Yeah, but mine looks like 36 and yours looks like 32. Anyway, Wayne started this, it will be like this for the rest of the session. Wayne started his career at Granada Television as a sports researcher before rising to become director of broadcasting in 1996.
Yeah.
Here he was responsible for shows as varied as This Morning, You've Been Framed, and The Shane Ritchie Experience.
I don't think I had any responsibility for that one.
Well, that's what your PR says.
Right.
And yet he still found time to kill off the Krypton factor.
I did kill off the Krypton factor. It's true. Someone had to. If only my ideal job when I was at Granada was to arrange the end of series party for Coronation Street.
Yeah, you would have been good at that.
Yeah,
I would trust you with that.
That's a joke. No.
Anyway, I've just got it. That is really very funny.
End of series party for Coronation Street. It's been running a long time.
He's so far ahead of us all, as you will discover from his worldview. He then went, I'll get through this in a minute, he then went to the BBC to become head of entertainment and features, where he played to his strengths with shows including I Love the 70s.
Who wrote this?
Grumpy Old Men, your PR.
I didn't make that show either.
A Question of Sports.
Yes.
And a revival of Top of the Pops.
No, well, we recast Andy Peters and it stayed it didn't die on my watch, that's all I'm saying.
Okay. In the early noughties, he became head of entertainment group for the BBC and amongst many successes was behind the phenomenal global success of Strictly Come Dancing, leading the charge for its global domination around the world as Dancing with the Stars. Little known fact, I executive produced 16 seasons of that show across 8 years.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
and when I told her she was going to do it, what was your initial thought about it?
I thought you were going to ruin my career and I would in turn ruin the show.
Major baby, major.
Yeah. But in fact, the ratings went up, didn't they?
Yes.
After moving to BBC Worldwide as managing director of content and production, he invested in Left Bank Pictures and Clerkenwell Films, whatever happened to those indies. However, nothing could pin him down, and after a short stint at All 3 Media as managing director of international production, he moved to Sony as chief creative officer, and amongst other achievements, invested in Bad Wolf. He likes football.
I do.
The Stone Roses.
Not really, no. The first album, but they're not. It's not the Clash, is it? Or the Arctic Monkeys.
Let me do it again. He likes
or even Wolf Alice.
He likes football. He quite likes the Stone Roses, and goes camping, not glamping, at Glastonbury every year.
Every year I do, as you know.
Okay, that is Wayne Garvie.
Thank
you
Jane.
so much for joining us here today.
I'll be off.
We're now off. Yeah. So, why don't we start? I know everyone has always everyone always ends their session with, okay, let's talk about television and how much we love television and what the favourite show is. But why don't we start by talking about television? Because you obviously, you've worked in it for so long now and you still love it.
I do.
So, why? What, and across so many different genres.
Why did It's funny you said about the Wayne and Jane thing. When I started at Granada as a sports researcher...
Very popular. If anyone wants to go to the more popular show next door,
go. I think it's Kevin Ligo, but don't worry, he's just making the same old jokes.
Yeah. Let's try. What we need to
let's
do.
all go and
Let's
see
make
him.
a bigger. Let's make a bigger noise than Kevin Ligo has. Yeah.
That's it. Let's show them. Great. Next year, it's the Pentland.
We'll do that every 5 minutes and completely ruin it.
Yes. But anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah. Anyway, so I got this job as a sports researcher, and the woman who was the head of HR, have I told you, the head of HR, a few years later said to me, I didn't shortlist you for the job. And I was like, oh, all right, okay. Why not? And she said, because your name is Wayne. And I didn't think that was a very Granada name. Which is true, actually. And so people like me, I come from my dad was a crane driver and what have you. And people like me, you didn't think you'd be working in TV. I mean, it wasn't something that you felt it was. But I loved TV. I used to watch TV. We're an ITV family. That's what we loved. Coronation Street. My mother still watches Coronation Street. That's how she talks to my daughters, because they watch Coronation Street with her. So TV was something. We didn't have much culture in our house. We lived in Suffolk. I mean, we didn't ever go we couldn't go anywhere. I never went to London. So it was all through TV, and TV educated me, actually. And so it's really, really, and entertained us and brought us together. And we had shared references about TV, and that's why I think it's such an unbelievable privilege to work in the industry.
No, I agree. That's why I dropped my first name, Pauline, because I didn't think anyone would give someone called Pauline a job in TV. And it's probably true.
Yeah.
So what do you watch on television? What are you currently watching?
What am I currently watching? Alien Earth.
Okay.
On my own.
Okay, that's probably quite scary, isn't it, to watch on?
Yeah, it's quite scary. Only 2 episodes so far. My wife won't watch it. And football, obviously, season started. So I'll be watching a lot of that. What have we finished recently? The Assassin. Oh, it's not very good.
Department Q.
Well, I wasn't going to. No, I mean, yes, Department Q,
yeah.
which I love, and yeah.
Reruns of Succession, Industry.
Well, Industry, Love Industry, yeah, all your stuff. I mean, if I was there though, I wouldn't get out because you've made so many great shows over the years.
This is going really well. So answer this question very, very carefully. What is, in your mind, the best television show, British television show of the last 50 years?
Well, I knew I was going to get asked this, of course, so I've got
If
2.
you say The Crown, I'm going to stab this arrow in your...
No, I'm not going to say The Crown. Although it's interesting because I chaired a panel today and someone said The Crown, and it's interesting how people feel around the world about The Crown. They really elevate it, whereas in Britain it's sort of slightly, people are a bit snobbish about it, I think, but that's a separate thing. So I'm going to give you 2. And the first one is Harry Hill's TV Burp, because it was such a clever, brilliant show, and we watch it on a Saturday night with my children and my stepchildren, and it brought us all together a bit, and it was endlessly inventive and so clever, and it really was too clever. Actually, there's no reason why that should be on ITV, the commercial network, and I love the fact it was sat there in ITV, so I love that. And then drama, I mean, and by the way, if you ask me this question tomorrow, it'll be Stella Street or something else, but Our Friends in the North. Okay. I love that show because...
That's a good one.
Well, it's an epic story of working class people from the north east of England, which you don't see very often, and I remember watching that and thinking, wow, that is just something else. What about you? What's yours?
Oh, you're asking me that question.
Yeah, I am. We're going to turn the tables.
So I might have quite a long answer. So I would probably say that I think the pluckiest TV show of the past 50 years is Coronation Street.
Pluckiest?
Pluckiest, because it's just been around for so long, and I learnt so much. Looking at Coronation Street, it was when I was a tiny kid, and my parents would watch it. I think it was in black and white then. And it just gave me, and they watched it because my dad was from Lancashire, and it kind of made him feel at home. And it introduced me to a whole sort of different way of storytelling, and the fact that it was really something to look forward to twice a week. And it was a way of talking to my parents. And
it was so funny.
Very,
that was
very
the great
funny.
thing of those characters, you know, all those, you know, Bet and
Yeah. No, it was brilliant.
Glory days.
But I do think that it's actually too difficult a question to, I don't know what you've all been thinking when you've heard people answer. Okay, right, after 3, 1, 2, 3. Thank you. I think it's too difficult a question because you can say our friends of the North, and there'll be people here who haven't, maybe haven't heard of it.
Yeah.
And I do think that it's almost like we need to think, all right, what is the show that changed the decade? So I would say Boys in the Black Stuff. I would say probably Prime Suspect. I would, or maybe This Life. I would say. Forgive me, Doctor Who, coming back in the early noughts.
Yeah.
I would like to say Succession, even though it's American, it had a very, very big British influence.
I think it's a British show, Succession.
And I don't think we know what the best show of this decade is yet. I mean, it could easily be Amongst Us. It could be Adolescence, but we don't know yet.
No, we don't know yet. And what about non-scripted? What would you go for?
I don't watch nonsense.
Okay, fair enough.
I think some of my earlier episodes of Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah, they still talk about some of those.
Top Gear US
Mostly you at the buffet.
Reboot.
The Top Gear US reboot. Yeah.
Ladies of London.
No one watched that.
Life Below Zero, still going.
Okay. Are we going to get to the point?
No, yeah, we are. Okay. So, thank you. So, we're here. So you can do the work while we take notes, essentially. What we want to find out from you is what your worldview is of our television industry.
Yep.
And if you could start by giving us succinctly and articulately a speedy cut and dice of the current state of the global television market as it applies to British TV.
Okay. Well, it's in, wherever you are in the world, it's a state of flux. I would argue, we'll probably discuss later, this is the way of things now. It's a permanent revolution in television. And it doesn't matter which country you're in, everyone's facing the same thing, which is traditional free-to-air television is under threat because of advertising revenue going like that. And in some countries, it's more marked than others. So if you go to somewhere like Brazil, it's the third biggest YouTube market in the world. It hasn't really got a history of free-to-air television as we know it. Globo, perhaps, a monopoly. But that's where the money's going. And you see the same in places like Mexico, etc. But the free-to-air broadcasters have been challenged for a long time, and they're still here. And that's the amazing thing. If you go to Australia, there's 4 or 5 commercial channels, free-to-air, which is kind of amazing in such a small country. And then you've got the streamers. The streamers are kind of, really, they're kind of maxed out in subscription levels. And in some countries, actually,
Are they all maxed out?
I think so, because they've been there long enough now, and we don't see those sudden growths anymore that you've got. So, and in some countries like Germany and the Nordics, they've kind of struggled relative to the UK. But they exist on a sort of thing, which is why, of course, now they're all having to think about different revenue models to illustrate they've got growth, which is why they've got advertising, why Netflix is thinking about doing off-air stuff and franchises and all that kind of extra value that comes off. So that's kind of is that
Yeah, that's
is that right?
that's good. So specifically, where do you feel the US is at then?
Yeah, well, the US, I mean, look, it's a cliche, the US sneezes and the rest of us get flu a few months later, and you definitely see that. So historically, I think you'll probably know this, but for the sake of it, American TV's been a bit network television. That was the thing that existed from the 50s effectively onwards, and the whole production of dramas, etc., was around the circle of development seasons and then the seasons, and they made shows in huge volumes that distributors picked up, sold around the world, and everyone bought them. It was a brilliant market, and the whole of the US TV, whether it's the agents, the distribution, everything is based around that model. And what's happened is it's gone and it's not coming back. So the free-to-air networks now are largely sports networks. That's where they're putting their
reality?
money.
Do they do
live shows? Reality, because it's cheap. They do reality, but they're more and more they're battling with each other for sports rights, because it's live, and that's where you're going to put the ad money. You're going to put it around live programming.
But so Grey's Anatomy is still
Yeah.
going, for example. So there are still some war horses in there.
There are, and what's interesting about something like that, they're still earning off the whole. It makes sense to carry on with that. But actually launching a new network show is quite difficult, because what they're also finding as distributors for American content is that actually the market doesn't want as much of that content as it did before. There's a contradiction in it, actually. They don't want as much, but they're missing it at the same time. So we're finding like European, France, Germany and places like that could do with procedural dramas with well-known American faces on, and they don't mind it being English language because they'll dub it, which is probably an opportunity for producers here. Actually, I really do think that Europe, we should look more towards Europe than America in some ways. Then you've got the cable business in America, which is really.
And did they start the cable businesses as a result of? So was FX started as a side shoot of Fox, for example?
Yes, some of them, and I mean they all came out. Like HBO was a sort of strange thing and everything, but really I think when I'm thinking about cable, I'm thinking less about the drama. I hate to say this to you, but there are a load of channels that are based around non-scripted content. You probably didn't know this. Whether it's Discovery or MTV or all that, and they've made acres of television, and lots of us Brits made for them, including, I believe, Ladies of London. Who was that made for? Bravo, there we go. And those channels are really, really being hit by the advertising squeeze, etc. And they're kind of pivoting to a new model, which is, you see that's what they're all trying to consolidate around. And then the streamers, of course, are the big thing in America. And then on top of that, you've got, which I should have mentioned in the overview, is the development of the creator economy, digital content, where all the ad money's going, which from my mind is where all the exciting things are happening.
So, what are you seeing then in the current state of the US market? So how are the cable channels doing? How are they, because the streamers kind of grew out of the success of the cable companies.
Absolutely.
Really,
if you think about it, Netflix ate HBO for quite a while.
Yeah.
I mean, the streamers now becoming much more mainstream in their choices. I suspect we're going to see lots of those cable, particularly non-scripted ones, disappear over the next couple of years, actually. I just don't see what the sustainable business model is anymore. Or they're evolving into a...
more digital.
Yeah, digital, fast channels and all that kind of stuff. I think what's interesting about America, and you can't get away from... I'm very... We've all grown up in a world in which American cultural hegemony, we've all lived under that. That is the way we've understood the world, and that's been what entertainment is. And lots of things we think about the world, lots of our values are imbued with that American freedom. And America's looked out to the world, it's exported. And now we clearly have an America that's looking inward, and that has an impact on the kind of programs it will choose, etc., I think. And again, I think that gives us all outside of the US an opportunity, but also to think about how the world might be changing and the way people are going to be looking towards American content. If Trump is followed by 8 years of J.D. Vance, it's going to be a very different country, and it's not going to be the country we understood as America.
And it might not be the country where we are all eagerly lapping up all of the dramas that it's making.
Yes.
Or it might be, because as you say, we may have all caught the flu by then and actually think the dramas that J.D. Vance is kind of projecting in some way. Yeah, we might.
We might do. I mean, the other thing about America, of course, is cost of production is too high. I mean, they're struggling to make show. You think as a drama producer here in the UK, oh God, I really can't make a drama for 2 million. They can't make a scene for 2 million.
Yeah, that's true. And so, in terms of a few more specifics about what the rest of the world looks like outside of America.
Yep.
Europe, I get the feeling, is in quite a calm place at the moment, and certainly Sorry, I'm going to just talk about drama and you can fill in for everything and make me look like an idiot, for which thank you. But I got the impression that it is in quite a calm and relatively open door type space.
I think so. I mean, the problem that European producers have is that lots of the streamers don't trust them to make anything but local content. So, they'll look to the Italians to do an Italian series, but they don't see them as people who can create, rightly or wrongly, premium content. So consequently, you get something like The Leopard, which was a Sky, actually it's slightly different because it wasn't actually a streamer, but I think it stands as a principle, which is you get a British writer, you have British directors. Son of the Century about Mussolini was the same thing, because actually there's a belief that somehow we haven't got, or these countries can't quite make drama to the standard that America and British can. And again, I see that, you and I have talked about this as an opportunity for British producers. Actually, we touched upon it today in the first session, I don't know if anyone was here, in which we talked how the French now are prepared to do Marie Antoinette in English with an English writer. I mean that's a country that really is very careful about its cultural imprint and its values.
Yeah. For people who were there in the Chris Bryant, Jack Thorne session, we touched on the high-end tax credit. I was challenging Chris Bryant's perceived wisdom that actually our UK tax credit is competitive. But actually there are other countries in Europe now who are much more competitive with their tax credits to try and encourage us all to go and work with them, aren't there?
Well, I always look to Spain, and I'm now going to sound like an even worse wanker than she portrayed me as. But I had lunch with the Spanish Prime Minister a few years ago at an event in Madrid. I mean, like you do.
I mean, I had lunch with the Spanish Prime Minister last week. I didn't.
You probably did, actually.
I've never had lunch.
In fact, you probably had it with the King and Queen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the difference. Anyway, but it was really interesting. He said to me something that really struck, and I haven't forgotten this. He said there are two industries we're going to invest in, which is energy, because the sun shines a lot and they've got a lot of desert. Oh yeah, and we want to be the country that breaks Europe's reliance on cheap Russian energy. That makes sense. And he said the second thing is film and television. And he actually said this. He said that we look at Britain led the way in terms of your public service broadcasting, the credits you gave, the support you gave to your industry, and the incredible craft skills and everything. And this was under the Tories, we don't understand why your government is at war with your industry, which is a growth industry. Mm. And I think that's interesting to me, that other countries around the world, and I'll just use Spain as an example, with regional tax credits, all those kind of incentives, they're very much on the front foot. They're out there trying to encourage us to come and produce there. And we've produced lots of stuff in Spain and will continue to do so because it's cheaper and it's very, very good. And I think that is a concern, actually, long term. So
I do think it's interesting because the creative industries is one of the government's top concerns, and it's an industrial white paper. It's obviously, we all know, it's an industry that literally brings billions into this country, but it does need a bit of protection.
It does, and also it creates proper jobs and careers. And like someone like me or someone like you, we can have a career that can take us around the world doing all these amazing things. That's lots of people can have that. That can still happen to children from underprivileged backgrounds like we were, and that's the great thing about it. Much better than working in a call centre. I mean, I'm not being disrespectful to call centres.
But I think my point is that I think our government are definitely seeing the importance of the creative industries, but there are some things maybe which I think we could get on to talk to later, where we need a few more guidelines or boundaries, like for example in the high tax credit. But let's come back to talking about that. And by the way, in my excitement of laughing at Wayne and getting you all to cheer, I forgot to say, do put questions in the app, because we'll have time at the end I'm going to try and put aside 15 minutes.
And ask anything. And we don't want, because we also know if our producer at the back is sending them in, because they come in as anonymous, don't they?
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
That's them. Okay, great. Get it. Well, I'll just give them all a name. It will be fine. Anything to say? I mean, I'm just, because none of us get a chance. You know, what can you tell us about Latin America and India? Because it might not be particularly relevant for us, you know, directly, but you get to see all of these places and the television industries of them, and it would be interesting to hear. Okay, well, Latin America, we have a production business in Mexico and one in Colombia and also in Brazil. That's a very different market. People think, by the way, that, oh, they all speak Spanish, so this content just travels around. Doesn't, actually, because the accents of the Argentinians, you know, well, none of the South Americans like Argentina. I love the Argentinians, but they're very, you know, the rivalries it's more like the EU, actually. It's sort of under pressure, and again, you can see digital really beginning to hoover up the ad money in those places. Brazil's really interesting because it was a monopoly market for so many years, really, under Globo, and then Netflix have come in and Amazon. It's very, very important to Amazon as a market. But it's the digital stuff that is really, really interesting there. And people, you know, turning podcasts into video casts, which have millions of viewers and growing quite quickly. Businesses that are, you know, with EBITs of 4 or 5 million a year, which is kind of what a production company would make after 15 years. Yeah. What I always find this. Andy Harris, who we know, who some of you may know, who runs Left Bank, one day said to me something like, well, you know, you need to up your distribution advance on some show. And I said to him, Andy, we can't invent new countries. You know, because I think sometimes people don't realise, where does content sell? I actually think Putin is trying to be honest. Yes, perhaps, yes, maybe. We used to have a Russian business. We had to close it down. We gave it to the... Anyway, moving on. But the fact is, British content, where does it sell is interesting. And we export just under 600 million to the US. But the next nearest country is Australia, which is about 150 million, I think. It's massive. And then you go down and you get to the Europeans, etc., and you get really, really small. And then you also can look, and this is quite interesting, what percentage do streaming services have of British content in different countries? And it's not as high as you might think. So Australia, which is the highest, is 13%. And then I think Ireland's like 11%. And there's a whole load of countries which are around about the 8%. But if you go to the APAC countries, you know, Southeast Asia and stuff, it's like it's like 3%. Our content does not tend to travel. So my question to that is, well, why doesn't it? Because American content does. So what is it about the American values and what do they make their shows look like? And is this pertinent to 2025, Wayne, or has it always been content? It's always been that way. You know, I mean, it's just not travelled as much as we think. I think it's changing a bit. Like in Mexico, there are 2 shows that people in Mexico always mention to me, which is one, The Crown. And no, but I suspect after the next season, I think industry's doing like that, isn't it? I mean, industry is going to be. I mean, I'm only joking. No, I know you are, but I think the tale of industry is a brilliant story. Thank you, Wayne. I know. Anyway, and the other one is sex education. And I've always thought, why the Mexicans love sex education, and why? Because it's got tropes of American television, I suppose, but it's shot through with an English sensibility, something that we do that no other country does. And I think that's what we give to the world in terms of our content. But really, sometimes I think here at Edinburgh, listening to people talk, you know, we all love the art of it. There's all shows that we make that we don't expect to make a lot of money on. We do it because we want to tell a particular story. But at the end of the day, this is a business. And how do we get better at creating ideas and content that the rest of the world wants to see? And so I know I do sound a bit like Liz Truss talking about cheese, but it's not good enough. You know, it's just not good enough. And I love that clip. That's like my favourite. Yeah, anyway, but why? Why aren't we selling more? What have we got to learn from other people? Because if we want a sustainable, growing business, we've got to ask ourselves those difficult questions. So what are the simple answers to those difficult questions?
Well, I think you've got to look at the kind of content choices you make. You've got to think about packaging.
Well, why don't we start by you tell us, what are the best-selling shows?
The best, well, historically, well, actually, that's quite a difficult one now, because in the past, it was easy. So you would say the best-selling Downton Abbey sold unbelievably well, obviously. Doctor Who always did really well, particularly in Australia and Canada, New Zealand, and a bit in the US. So costume dramas were always there or thereabout. And then, of course, you've got the non-scripted shows that you've never heard of, which the formats have always done really well. But now, of course, it isn't so much, it's adolescence has sold to one buyer and been watched around the world. Department Q is another example that people around the world love. But they're not, so it's quite difficult. Well, actually, it's a bit easier, isn't it? Because you can look at, I think it was brilliant. Last year, I mean, all those shows that Nikki Schindler makes, the Harlan Coben ones, and Adolescence, Sex Education, these shows are in the top 10 shows from around the world. It's just, it's amazing. What an amazing world we live in which you can make a show. You can shoot a show in Edinburgh from a bunch of Nordic books with an American showrunner made by a English production company, and it becomes a hit around the world. I mean, that's just amazing.
So what then, given all of that, what do you feel the rest of the world thinks about the UK? What do they want from all the programmes that everyone here are developing and making?
Yeah, I think they want, I think, well, one, they'll always want costume dramas, right? Because that's what they expect. And for the rest of the world, British costume dramas are aspirational. We regard something as aspirational as Sex in the City. Do we? Is that aspirational?
Not for me,
no.
Wayne,
okay.
no.
Right. But for some people. Yeah. I don't know, what is aspirational? What's aspirational drama from a British perspective? Something with sunshine.
But would it even be, I haven't seen the show, so I don't know. But I mean, but would it be something like anything that Saran Jones is in, where you think in that situation I would be her? Is that aspirational? Yeah, because we're very good at doing Saran Jones.
Yeah, we are very good, and she's wonderful. Yeah. I think they look for us for costume dramas because it talks to a world and what they expect of Britain. I think they like our sense of humour.
Yep.
I think that's really important.
So does comedy travel?
Comedy doesn't tend to travel, but it's...
drama with wit.
Drama with wit.
Yeah.
I think drama, all the best shows have drama wit, don't they? And they expect the unexpected. I mean, adolescence, I find this whole debate around... I just don't, honestly. So let me get this right. No streamer would make a show like Adolescence, except for the one that developed it and then the one that actually made it. And we don't make shows like that in British television anymore, but we would have done if... I don't understand it. And I think Adolescence is it's a wonderful piece of work, obviously.
And just needs to be celebrated for having been made, rather than, but you shouldn't have made it.
You shouldn't have made it. And it talks to universal themes. And I think that's the great thing, isn't it? Can we in Britain tell stories that have a universality about them, that talk to, in this particular case, the fear that so many of us have that technology is destroying the lives of our children in particular, and that is a worldwide, everyone in the world feels like that. So that idea that you've got, which we can't talk about, that you were talking about yesterday, I think is really smart.
That's great, that's really good. It's a really good conversation.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry, I let you all down.
So where do you think, Wayne, our British television industry, where is it? Because we've spoken from your worldview perspective, how should we look at this? Because obviously we've spent, inevitably, we spent time over the past couple of days looking at the fact that we're in a tight spot at the moment from a funding point of view. You moderated a panel this morning that was all devoted to that, and it does feel that we are in it is a particular moment, and we are potentially in some state of flux. Can you just give us your view on how you think that is impacting things on unscripted and how it's impacting things on scripted, and then maybe we can move on to, all right, and what can we do? You know, what would you like to see done in order to help stabilise everything? So perhaps we still make adolescents, but we don't have to have all the conversations about it.
Well, let's talk about scripted first.
Yep.
And, well, actually, no, before we do that, actually, I think, I think things are changing all the time, but they've always changed. And there is a natural human propensity to think the recent past that you have lived is the natural state of things. And it is not. It is not. Television is a relatively young industry compared to professional football or the canned beans. It's a young industry, and it is evolving at a pace of knots. And what you either have to do, you either have to grumble about that and moan about it, or you adapt. And people have got to adapt because the world is changing. And if you can't see that, then frankly, you're an idiot. Because the world is changing, and we are changing with it, and we are making different choices in the content we as consumers make. In drama, what people seem to, I'm an optimist. More drama is made in the world now than any other time, apart from possibly 2 years, ever. Right? There's loads of drama being made out there. And I know it's not as much as it was, and I know there's economic pressures, because actually inflation is such, and that is difficult. But we've got to learn to make drama cheaper, and it's going to be a barbell. You're going to have drama that's 2 million and under, and then you're going to have drama that's going to be 4 or 5 million upwards, right? And it's the stuff in between that's going to get really squeezed and disappear. But you should be optimistic about drama. I think, because people want it.
People want British drama.
People want British drama, right? And so that's great. Non-scripted, where I spent a large part of my career, is far more challenged. And it's challenged for a number of reasons, because, well, I think the fundamental reason it's challenged is that when we were young, apart from you didn't want to work in non-scripted, 30 years ago, it was a great thing. Oh God, it was great. And then 20 years ago, when we were developing all these formats that went around the world, it was a great time to be alive. And more importantly, young people aspired to work in traditional television, making light entertainment or factual entertainment. And we had free-to-air channels that had acres of space to fill up, and it was cheaper, so people just commissioned it, and a lot of it flew around the world. It has changed. The broadcasters no longer have those slots to fill. If they do, they haven't got as much money to go around. But more fundamentally, the audience has changed with the technology. And the days when people sat in on Wednesday night at 8 o'clock to watch Ground Force and will watch the same show next week at 8 o'clock have gone. And they are not coming back. And people who think they're going to create a format and sell that format around the world and do well, you might do if you're Steam and Lambert, but really, it is not going to happen in the way it did for so long. And my second point is, when I look at the young people now working in what I would still quaintly call television, they are working in the digital economy. They are creating, you should never talk about your own children, but I'm going to. My daughter has her own video channel. She's got 100,000 subscribers. She makes her own content. She's traveling, she gets taken around the world on ridiculous trips. She's living an unbelievable life that I would have dreamt of at 26, and she's not even that successful. And there are hundreds of young British people doing that because they talk directly to their audience, they make the content themselves on their phones, and increasingly they're finding that pays for itself. And that is to be cherished. And so why would you now go and work for a non-scripted company on trying to develop a format that you then, by the way, have to take to someone, to sell to someone, to sell to someone else, to sell to someone else before you commission it?
But Wayne, there will be producers who are working in unscripted companies in the audience,
yep,
and who will need a bit of help and guidance as to, okay, what do you do? If you aren't 26 and a content creator, and you are in a company that specialises in unscripted, and those format slots are not appearing anymore, what do you do? How do you think television could or should or would evolve in an unscripted way? Or do you think that everyone needs to really reinvent and start all over again?
I think it's mixed portfolio, a bit like what we do with our companies. You want, if you're lucky enough to have some existing IP, or you're lucky enough to be able to develop some of those, because you will sell shows. I'm being slightly over dramatic to make a point, but you then got to think about how you enter the world of digital. I think the podcast world's very interesting. For years, we've sort of in television not wanted anything to do with podcasting because we couldn't work out how to monetize it, and it's just that's for radio producers. So if you look at something like Gary Neville's The Overlap.
Yeah.
So Gary tells me that the average listenership for The Overlap, which he makes 40 episodes a year, is I think about 30,000 people. Don't quote me on this because I've probably got it wrong, but I think it's around about 30,000 people on average who listen to it. 1.2 million people watch it. 1.2 million watch it. And of course people in traditional television go, yeah, but look at it. Look at it. Well, yeah, look at it. It's got the same production values, I see Graham's here, as the Graham Norton show. You know, it's the same number of cameras, and it's a family.
Hasn't got the same star though, Graham. So
well, that's Graham Stewart, I should say, not Graham. I don't think the other.
If
Graham was here, that'd be a different thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, Graham Norton.
Graham Norton is here. But you know, now you can, and you look at that, and then of course what happens is you start to develop a relationship with brands, and brands come to sponsor it directly, and then they say, well, actually that works well for football, Gary, can you do one on rugby? I think he did, or whatever. So actually, if you're going to have longevity as a non-scripted producer, you've got to understand what your relationship is going to be with brands. And you've got to start, as a television producer, you make for every platform. YouTube is just another platform. And where we are now is that sooner, really very, very soon, the ad money is going to fall down and it's going to be there. So you've got to now pivot towards that world, I would argue. And I know it's difficult to pivot, but we've done it. That's what you've got to do. You've got to change and adapt.
How does scripted need to change and adapt? So you talked about it being, I can't remember what the analogy was, but sort of squeezed at, or kind of like you focus at both ends. So one needs to be lower cost for 2 million and one higher. But I have had conversations with Sony where we've talked about where's the sweet spot of what you need to be able to get a scripted piece funded. So we've looked at equations. This is outside of a streamer, obviously. We've looked at equations where if one of the public service broadcasters will give you, say, £1 million an episode, and then you would need to raise the same in the US in some way, and then you would put your 20% tax credit in, and then Sony would look to make up the rest. So there really is a sweet spot where it gets a bit ouches if it goes over 3 million.
Yeah.
And 3 million will not get you, it will not get you every star that you might ever dream of, but it will get you someone impactful who the audience might recognize in the hope that you can then sell it around the world. So I kind of feel that maybe there is a more middle bit, unless, or do you think the 3 million is the higher echelon? I mean,
of that 3 to 2 million.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it probably is.
Yeah.
Unless you do get an American pre-sale.
Yeah.
And by the way, I mean, we're all depressed about the American, but I can see it beginning to ease up a bit. Actually,
you can.
I can, and our distribution team is having some success with. We've started to sell Australian content in America, which we've never done before. We've had some pretty strong titles actually, like Narrow Road to the Deep North and what have you. But we've just, I can see it sort of change. I think really the question is, what is the content that you're trying to make? I mean, we will, as a distributor, as you know, we will take risks on stuff, and you cannot guarantee it's going to work. But our job is to really back you and the rest of the producers in the group with your ideas, because actually, when it works well, it really, really does work well. I think on the casting, I think we've got to learn from American packaging, really. Because you know that if you come with a particular project to a distributor, it's got Graham Stewart attached, it gets a certain price. If it's got Graham Norton attached, sorry, Graham. You know, and I think we're not very good at thinking. We're a bit nervous about it, aren't we?
So what? But we all know that it's challenging. You know, everyone is talking about it. We know that it's challenging to make ambitious drama that can compete with some of the dramas that are being made with the streamers, which perhaps have, I mean, they're not huge budgets. I think we all get incredibly carried away and think there's kind of gold in the hills of all the streamers, which I do not believe there is. I think they are much more, they have a much more sensible facing look at what's cost effective and what really is going to bring them back value than that. But it is difficult, and we wrestle a lot with this, thinking, okay, what do we do? You know, in order to make something which is going to feel ambitious and impactful and distinctive at the 2 million kind of level, budget level, do we look to AI and see, okay, and what does that mean?
Yeah.
I think would be useful for everyone to hear. Or do we do, and I don't think they're mutually exclusive, do you do a kind of modern retro old school? Because sometimes when we're looking to be future facing, looking to what we've done in the past, so do you do something which is actually just so much simpler than lots of the things that we have been doing? What would you think
I think
that might sell?
I think there's a lot to learn, or increasingly from what is happening with micro dramas in some of the, I mean, not the Chinese, I mean, they're pretty ropey, but actually the manner of production, etc. You know, how because we still make television in a traditional way, and we're not a vegan. And to your point about AI, I don't think at this moment in time we quite understand the impact it is going to have in the next 3 years. But I think it's going to be quite significant in terms of the way we organise ourselves and you know, the actual management of productions, and also, of course, effects, etc., etc. So I think it will be interesting in 5 years' time if we have this conversation. It will be interesting to know what the drama's really costing. You know, those world's dramas. You know, what do they cost? How many people are involved? Because a lot of people get involved. And I quite like your idea of the stripped out, because there's something. What's interesting about the creative economy, and people are watching acres of stuff on YouTube, and they don't differentiate necessarily in terms of quality, do they? And it's just about storytelling. And we haven't had, you know, the way that some of those British shows we talked about, This Life, for example. I mean, that was quite revolutionary, the way it was shot. And I think Simon Heath said yesterday about how many hours how many minutes rather they shot in a day.
Yeah, it was very, very cost effective.
We haven't really looked at how we make things for quite a while, have we? We should do that, actually, shouldn't we?
I think that's a good, I think that's good. And I just want to ask you one other thing, and then we'll go on to the questions. So you talked earlier on about finding that there wasn't quite enough high volume and franchise material coming through television. So how do you think we can tackle that in the UK? Because we're not massively well known for being high volume commissioners, are we?
No.
Or people who are, clearly I love a franchise, but somehow it always seems to come in the form of a trilogy. So I need to note to self to improve on that. But how do we persuade our UK commissioners that actually this will be a good thing to do to help sell around?
Well, volume now is 8 episodes, isn't it? I mean, that's the. I mean, no one's really expecting 24 or any more 24 episodes.
Well, maybe we should be doing.
I
mean, in order to be able to make the piece for 2 million an episode, maybe an economy of scale is the way to go. But would Sony take a punt on 24 episodes or something? And I know you'll say it depends on what it is, and of course it depends on what it is. But in principle, do we think we'd? I
think we will. I mean, we've done spec series before. We've only done one, which was Alex Rider, which was a known piece of IP, and we made the series, and we did really well out of it. And we thought that would be a franchise, but as it was, for complicated reasons, Amazon didn't come in after season 4. And I think franchising is very interesting because we do kind of regard it as a bit of a dirty word, and the Americans understand it brilliantly. You take something. I mean, there's a show that we Left Bank make with the US studio that we shoot up here between Scotland and which is Scotland and Glasgow, Outlander, which when originally it was pitched, no one in the UK wanted to buy it, and it became this huge show for Stars, and then there was lots of people who wanted it, and now that's leading to a show called Blood of My Blood, which is a spin-off because the actors have moved on. That's very much an American way of thinking about it. And by the way, those books were not well-known books. Yeah. I mean, they were found by someone in a bookshop in Culver City. And when I look at our companies, I think, how can we develop franchises? How can we really compete? And it's difficult if you haven't got, you kind of need a piece of IP behind it. And one of the things I'm quite interested in is, well, if we can't find the IP, we can't afford to buy the IP because A24 have come in and paid ridiculous amount of money for it to sit on a shelf.
For it to sit on the shelf and not get made.
And not get made and everything else and whatever. Well, perhaps we have to make our own. Perhaps actually we have to start writing our own books. And there's ways of developing stories that you could do on digital platforms that then eventually become books. So actually we could take that long-term view. Okay, let's see if we could develop that. I'd really like to start doing that because I think we've got to...
I often think that the kind of novels that make good television, it was interesting hearing Shonda talk about Bridgerton yesterday, and I was fascinated by the kind of coincidence or the synchronicity, if you like, in which she found Bridgerton, and then it formed, okay, it's 8 books, it will be 8 seasons, and each one will be a different Bridgerton child, and there you have it. But she's really adapted those books. Yeah. And I think television loves a good novel, but not necessarily the finest piece of literature, because then you have to adapt it kind of like, moment by moment by moment. But we often say that when we take on these books, that it is the equivalent of about 12 months spent in a writer's room, looking for this kind of world building and IP that we can then lift and, give to television. So maybe we just need to spend longer developing it.
Yeah, because actually the cost of developing a novel would be
cheaper than buying the novel. That's a really good point. Right, unbelievably, Wayne, there are some people here who want to ask you a question. They're not all anonymous. Wayne's view is that whenever there's an anonymous question, it means his PR has written it.
Can I just say, I haven't got a PR.
Yes, you have. Well, Ed, would you please stand up? Yeah, he has. And Ian kind of works for you too. Right, this is from Naomi. What opportunity is there for British producers to work in countries with Europe, and specifically in the light of the K-wave Korea?
Oh.
Good question, Naomi.
Yeah,
do you want to talk about K-pop demon hunters? I said it for you.
You did, K-pop demon hunters. I mean, that's interesting, isn't it? Because that's actually a Sony movie, although we don't have anything. I haven't got anything to do with it. Can't claim any credit. But I think what's interesting about that is that's the most talked about show in the summer. That film for Netflix, and it's come from Korea. It's like our anime business. The fastest growing part of Sony is our anime Crunchyroll platform. And those of you who have children of a certain age, or perhaps even yourselves, have suddenly embraced anime in a way no one had heard of it 5 years ago.
And that was COVID.
That was COVID. You think it was COVID? But it does illustrate stories and finding stuff from different places. So about a year ago, I got invited, and it was just a jolly, frankly, to an
opportunity to clock up those air miles.
Well, not really, because it was only in Italy, so it was even more jolly.
I hope you took a train.
Well, it was originally going to be in that really lovely town, which is on a mountain, and then after they decided to have a conference there, they discovered there weren't any hotels to hold a conference there, so it was in a far less salubrious place down the coast. But anyway, I had these Italian producers in the room, and I said, Italy has got the greatest IP in the world. It's got 2,000 years of IP.
The greatest cuisine.
The great cuisine.
Greatest cuisine.
But it has.
And IP.
It has. And IP. Okay. And you know, you go about the Romans and you go through the Renaissance and you go up to the Dolce Vita, you know, wherever you're, 2,000 years of unbeatable IP. And what happens is you let the Brits and the Americans come in and steal it and reinvent it. Because you can't think differently about, and it's a bit like Morgane in Canal Plus was talking today, a French person can't interpret Marie Antoinette in a way that is relevant to a modern audience. And that, my friends, is a lesson for you as British producers, because you've got a different way of thinking about content, and there is an opportunity. And secondly, as I said earlier, streamers are thinking these producers can't really reach the level. That's an opportunity.
I know, but it will be very, very interesting when someone comes in from Spain and says, we are going to make a drama about the swinging 60s. And BBC say, let's take that because you British producers can't see your way through.
Well, is it Maxton Hall, the Amazon show, which is a German production about a British public school. So come on, we've got to get our act together because even the Germans are on it now.
That's very, very good. Okay, well, this probably leads very organically then into a question which is from Anonymous, but I don't think it's from Ed or Ian. When investing, because they just would not ask you this question, when investing in new companies, what are you looking for?
I'm not looking to invest in new companies.
Exactly, there we are, you see.
I've got, honestly, I mean, I'm sparing her blushes. We are extraordinarily lucky at Sony with the range of companies we've got here. We've got Bad Wolf and Left Bank, we've got the best two British drama companies, and we've got a range of other companies that are really great. We've got the best drama company in Australia by a long way, and we've got a load of great companies in Latin America. We are, you know, we want to grow the companies we've got. We are not looking to invest in other drama labels or non-scripted labels.
What, in order to, anyone who's asked that question is sitting with their head down feeling depressed.
But Fremantle will buy you.
Their heads are a little lower now. Let's look at this in a different way then. What are the most exciting things or trends you've seen in the creator economy, and what lessons should producers take from that, and as addendum, so that people like yourself would really want to buy them?
Okay, right. We might be interested in the digital. I think it's the speed to market and the constant churn of ideas and quickly, and the fact that they can talk directly to an audience, and it's self-commissioning. You and I have talked about this. I think we've got ourselves into a bit of a pickle in this country and many other markets where we've got professional cadres of commissioners who aren't empowered by the people who put them into their jobs, and so consequently to get an idea away you've got to talk to that person who's then got to convince that person who's probably got to convince that person and possibly another person, and then they all have to have a role in the production of the idea, and it goes on and it goes on. Meanwhile, the fastest growing television channel in the world is YouTube, and guess what? It's self-commissioning, and there might be a lesson in there. Whoa, look at that!
Well, these questions are brilliant. They're just naturally flowing from one to the other. What would be your ideal vision towards a future television market? What way would you wish you could see it develop and progress?
Bloody hell.
Well, okay. Let me put that in another way then. This is a big question, but we've got 2.5 minutes, so that's fine. What would good look like for the future of television, and how do we get there? So you've given us a clue.
In Britain?
Yeah, in Britain. You give us a clue to that.
Okay, I think it is a fast-moving industry that creates global content that you know works around the world for people and brings the value of that back to Britain, and it becomes the fastest-growing industrial sector in Britain. And it's a great show. I mean, for me, it's all about the shows. That's why I get excited when you come to me. We don't get excited about how we're going to find. It's always about you saying to me, "Oh, we got this." That's why I love all that. I just love ideas and people coming. It's just so exciting, isn't it? And then you see it. You know, I don't do any work. I just sit there and you go away and do it, make it, and I just sit there and go, "God, that's great."
And then
although not always
on a plane. No, okay. That's harsh but true. All right then. Let's give you a less touchy-feely question then. What is the most underestimated European market for TV production that we should look to produce more in?
Oh, that's interesting. Germany might be
I
quite
was going to
interesting.
say Germany. Yeah, I completely agree
I think
with
Germany
that.
is the biggest economy in Europe,
Yeah.
free to air, but blah, 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 blah.
Okay. Do you think we are at content saturation? I should have just done all these audience
That's
questions
great.
quick fire the whole way through. Do you think we are at content saturation point, especially now with all the digital content available? And if we are, what can we do?
I don't know if we are. I mean, in certain areas it might be. Perhaps there's too much drama with documentaries and blah, blah. Finding it is difficult, etc. But I think there's going to be more content because people are going to be doing it on their phones and they're going to be chucking it out, etc., etc.
And I think this may be the last question. Could AI translation tools evolve how productions are presented in global markets? Would you export productions with reworked visuals for international audiences?
Possibly. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a technology.
Okay.
Can I want to say something though about. Can I
You can, because I can't make the thing work.
Yeah,
to
I
get
had
the
that
last
problem
question.
earlier.
So, yeah.
I've said this once before. I don't know how many of you know who Antonio Gramsci was. He was a Marxist writer, and he was imprisoned by Mussolini. And he never saw one of it. He was born. He was a person of restricted growth, and he was a hunchback. So he had a lot of things went wrong for Gramsci in his life. In the last 15 years or so, in a Mussolini prison in isolation, was pretty bad. But he famously talked about optimism. And he said there was pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will. And the one thing I would say as TV producers you always have to have, particularly in the world in which we live in now, pessimism of the intellect, but optimism of the will. That's the thing I would say to everyone.
And on that note, I can think of no better note to end on. Edinburgh, please give Wayne one of your big hurrahs. Thank you very much.
Thank you.